All right. Vic Tarasik, are you in Texas today?
I am in Texas today. I'm just outside of Houston. So
So that's give me the general idea of where you are in relation to Kerrville.
Kerrville, it's
Kerrville.
about an 8-hour drive away.
Okay, you're not anywhere
It,
near.
it's a hike. It's a hike. So thankfully we haven't experienced the weather events. We were concerned with some of our church group kids had gone out to camp, and Marlene and I were talking about it. We weren't certain if it was our camp that had gotten hit. Our camp's up north.
Oh,
Thankfully,
wow. I was actually talking to one of my team members yesterday, one of our social media managers,
yeah.
and her doctor's daughter was
Oh,
in the flood. And so my team member Hannah, she only lives like within an hour from there, so they've
mhm,
been feeling lots of people coming over there, and obviously
mhm.
people, and it's
Right.
very, very sad. Well,
Yeah.
all right. Everybody, welcome. As you know, every month we are bringing in a friend from the industry that we know, like, and trust, and bringing them here to answer questions that we know our shop owner friends have. Most of our clients have a coach, but even those who have a coach sometimes find themselves outgrowing the coaching group that they might be in,
Right.
or are just ready for something fresh, new, and different. And then for those clients who don't have a coach, we just like for them to hear from the different coaches that we like to work with in the industry. So today, we have our good friend Vic Tarasik, shop owner coach. And so thanks so much, Vic, for taking some time out to spend with us today. And we are going to jump in and I like to ask kind of the same questions of every coach, but
Mhm.
every conversation tends to take on its own path, if you will. So I'm sure ours will do the same thing. So we've known each other. I'm trying to remember where we first met, and I
Vision.
can't. Was it
Vi-
Vision?
Vision in 2020.
Okay. So COVID
Pre-
year.
it was at that point where people were starting to get freaked out. It was, I went to shake hands with somebody there, and they're like, "Oh no, you got the plague."
Mhm.
I'm like, I had no idea what was going on. And a few weeks later, the world shut down.
Yeah, literally, I think it was 1 week later, because I remember being at Vision
Hmm.
when my crazy mama, who just passed away in January, called me frantic. She was always super dramatic and the most worrisome person that I've ever known. And she called me sobbing, crying, freaking out.
Right.
There's this virus in China that's coming over here, and we're going to be locked in our houses and wearing masks. And I remember standing outside
Hmm.
at the Sheraton with my mama on the phone. I'm like, Mom, I don't have time for this. That you're crazy. Turn Fox News off. Go take a Xanax or something and take a nap. This is America, the United States. Nobody is going to be locked in their house. You
Right.
are not going to be wearing a mask. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I talked her off the ledge. We left, and literally the following weekend was the March 15th, I think, when the world shut down. I was like,
Right.
oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
so yeah, we've known each other for several years. We've had lots of conversations, and
Hmm.
so grateful for our relationship in this
Yeah.
industry and for everything that you're doing. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to
Okay.
have this conversation at the end, give you a chance to tell people where they can connect with you, or how they can reach out to have a conversation, ask any additional questions.
Okay.
But in the meantime, for anyone that's watching, whether you're watching us live or if you are watching the playback, like if you're watching later, if you have questions, please drop them in the comments, and I've got them right here. Vic probably see them as well, I
I
think.
can.
um, if any questions come through, we will answer them during this session. But if you post your comment after the session, our team is paying attention to the comments, and we will reach out to Vic and get any questions answered that you may have after we turn this live session off. So one of the things that we find, Vic, is that whether it's a shop that's been in business for a long time or someone just opening, having the right numbers to track in a
Hmm.
shop. And by the way, we're not limiting this to only marketing. If there's any, kind of anything in the shop, honestly. But what would you say are the most impactful shop numbers that a shop owner should be tracking in order to reach his or her goals?
Okay, great question, and thank you. First off, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to having a great conversation. So this is a great one to set up. So for from our side, we track four numbers, and the reason we track four of them is because most everybody tracks bottom line and top line sales, but these numbers drive that: car count, average written per repair order, which is average estimate, which comes off the inspection, close ratio, and effective labor rate. So each of these numbers, the car count is going to show how well the marketing is doing, how well the owner is doing his job to make rain to get cars to come through the door. Average written per repair order is how well are they doing inspections? Is it part of their culture?
Mm,
We have shops in our program who their average written per repair order is $2,400. They have an average repair order because of that of about 1,200 bucks, 1,400, someone with that. The close ratio also another indicator of just the advisor how well they're doing, or how well they're taking pictures. Then effective labor rate is really going to be the meat of that is how well are they selling the hours that are in the shop.
mhm.
The top line and bottom line numbers will essentially take care of themselves if you watch these four numbers. And depending on
Okay.
the shop management system, they're actually really easy to get out of it. Some of them have it right in their dashboard.
Yeah. Well, I really like how you laid it out, how car count is an indication of what your marketing is doing, and this is an indication of that. It makes sense. It makes it easier to
Right.
understand. So that's awesome. Now, what about, so speaking of marketing, which
Mhm.
I'm not trying to focus on marketing, but going back a little bit to what you just said is, and we struggle with this all the time, is that shops are paying us to do their ads,
Mhm.
plus they're allocating a budget to the ads.
Right.
And so the marketing is working. We can see, right? We also listen to phone calls so we know if it's a
Mhm.
qualified call or not. And so once there's the handoff between marketing and sales, in other words, when the service advisor picks up the phone,
Mhm.
how does a shop owner know if their service advisors are doing well on phone calls?
This is a question that's near and dear to my heart. The shop owner who has a recording system in place, and we've all been on the other end of that line. We were calling customer service. This call will be recorded for training purposes. Well, that's
Mhm,
really what that is. It's training purposes. You would be surprised at the opportunities when an owner listens to an advisor go through a repair order or how they answer the phone, what training opportunities are available. I've got one shop in our advisor training, and it's was fascinating when he first came in because the owner was listening to the calls, but he didn't pick up this one thing. And we had, and I was listening to the calls. We were kind of breaking down, well, why was he having some hesitancy with his clients, or they were pushing back when he would present things on the inspection? Because in their shop, what they had was a program that whatever car came through the door, they inspected. Well, what came out of this recording was when he presented the past the oil change and the tires, he presented anything else to the customer. The customer was just kind of, you could hear in their voice where they were surprised.
mhm,
And so I asked Mike, I go, did you get approval for this complimentary inspection from the customer? He's like, no, I didn't. He goes, 'cause that's just what we do. And I go, Did you notice how surprised he was? And after he listened to his own call, he's like, wow, now I'm picking up on that. And I go, even if it's a free inspection, still getting authorization, the customer's giving you permission. And that training opportunity, then he then took that, and on the next 2 vehicles that came through the shop, he changed his approach, got approval, and what did he immediately do? He sold 2 very large repair orders right behind that. So, an owner who would be hesitant to record phone calls because they don't want, their people to think they're watching over them, you're there to make as an owner, you're there to make them better. You're
Mhm.
there to improve them. No one wants to have somebody over their shoulder, but truthfully, if you can watch over my shoulder, Kim, and help me to get better, I should welcome that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had, so the lady I was talking about earlier, yesterday was my 30-day check-in with her. She's been here just at 30 days.
Mhm.
And of course, I had feedback for her, and her reception of it, I was intentionally watching, because when you're interviewing someone, I don't know about you, but I ask questions about that help me understand what type of person they are in receiving
Right.
feedback. And
Yeah.
people are going to generally give you the scripture answer. Oh, I'm all, but this was an opportunity for me to really see how she was going to receive that, and it was very clear to me that she was eager to learn and grow and
Right.
better. And so I love that you shared that part. And it's funny, I always hear this call is being recorded for trading purposes, but I never once until just now like connected how great of an example that is. But absolutely, when we're listening, we're not listening for sales quality.
Right.
We're listening to the customer to find out, are we attracting the right customer for the shop, right?
Right. Yeah.
So sometimes it's so glaringly obvious, though, that the service advisor is rude or they never once asked to schedule the appointment. Like, hey,
Right.
I can get you in tomorrow at 2 p.m. How does that work? None of that. And so, as you know, we have in our client portal, we have links to service advisor sales trainings and things like that. And so we will often, first, if someone is already with a coach, we're obviously pointing them back to their coach. But if they
Right.
don't, then we're saying, hey, you may want to put your service advisor through some training. And so I think
Right.
that um, it's awesome that you explained how that plays out from your perspective. So thanks for doing that. Are there any, like, I know that this question answers can change every single month depending on what's happening in the world or what's
Mhm.
happening in the industry or whatever current events are going on. But what are the most common mistakes you're seeing shop owners making right now?
Mm. Taking people for granted,
Oh,
whether and what it, we're in the people business. And when I say people, customers, employees, vendors, they're part a parts vendor. That's a relationship that you have. If you're chasing, and I'll use a parts vendor because most people don't talk about the parts vendor. But if we don't have someone supporting us, to give us a good parts, get them to us in a timely manner, and stand behind them if there's an issue, it kind of it inhibits our ability to give that great customer experience.
mhm.
And where I'm headed to too is when we take people for granted, we take employees for granted. Uh, somebody's been with us for 10 or 12 years, and we're out recruiting new people, but we're not thinking about retaining the person we have.
Yeah.
It's kind of goes the same thing with marketing. And you probably see this statistic. 75% of your marketing should go budget should go towards customer retention, 25% for new customer acquisition. Because if not, you're just going to have a continual revolving door.
Mhm.
Uh, I'll share a story that I just spoke with a client last week who had one person leave because what it came down to was they took them for granted. And our coaching shift with him shifted because we've been focusing on, as a newer client, we've been focusing on getting their numbers right, processes right, and and we then this was revealed like they have a personal issue, because if we don't have the right people in place, we'll never be able to generate the numbers we talked about at the beginning.
Mhm.
So that's, that's, I would say that's probably the most common. Uh, the ones who have it down, like, I'll call your high performing shops, which I'm sure a lot of the folks that are listening, high performing shops, they got a culture down. They're not taking people for granted, but there might be a weakness somewhere in the chain. Are you recognizing people? A simple good morning and a thank you for something specific goes so far with an employee. They will continue to push, because when they leave the shop, they're not leaving typically for money.
Mhm. Mhm.
In that scale from, of the top 10 things, money's down in this number. It's number 7.
Yeah.
Uh, there's a great book out there years ago. It was called Love 'Em or Lose 'Em. People leave people first.
Mhm.
They're gone before the toolbox ever rolls out the door. What happened in their relationship?
I always say that, um, when someone quits working here,
Hmm.
that I got fired.
Right.
And so, generally speaking, I always like to have an exit interview with, like,
Hmm.
what could I have done to change this outcome?
Right.
Sometimes people are too far gone to give you honest feedback, or emotions might be too high, or whatever it might be. But, you talked about culture, and I believe that when you build a culture of trust,
Hmm.
an open door. I just had one of my team members who's been with me for 3 years. She came to me last week and shared something very emotional and personal. And I think she was considering quitting, but had an open conversation with her. It was a great chat. It was Friday, and I said, it was Friday before last, and I said, look, I want you to take the rest of the day, just go rest, get some
Hmm.
fresh air, do some prayer, some journaling, some breathing, like just really look at the whole picture, because I believe that if you quit, you're going to regret it.
Right.
And so I want you to make sure that your yes is yes and your no is no. And so come back to me on Monday and let me know for sure where you really stand. And she came back on Monday, and just having the open door and giving her a space to just vent and say how she was feeling. She came back on Monday and she said, "You're right. I don't need to go anywhere. This is where I belong.
Yeah.
I love it here." And, she's the perfect example. I learned from that conversation, right? In that, so we're an EOS company and we
Hmm.
follow EOS to the T, have for probably we're going on 4 years, maybe, I think now, or 5, but I think
Hmm.
4. And when you look at the people issues, which, and I always can tell you two, and then I can't tell you the other two, but it's like right person, right seat,
Right.
right person, wrong seat, wrong person, wrong seat, wrong person, right seat, some whatever.
Yeah.
And, and so people would think your biggest people issue is the wrong person in the wrong seat.
Hmm.
But the real big people issue is the right person in the right seat. And the reason is because you think they're doing great. They're coasting right along. They're a great person. They're doing a great job, but they're not receiving exactly what you just said, right?
Right.
You're like, I don't have to worry about Tom. He's over there
Right.
doing his thing. And so your attention is going to the wrong person, the wrong seat,
Hmm.
which is the
Hmm.
wrong person, period. And and so I think that for people to not pay attention, and like you came out straight out the gate with taking people for granted, is you've got to give attention and love on the people that
Yeah.
are doing a great job, and mentor them, continue encouraging them. So that's a fresh perspective for that question. Generally it's something in a completely different area of shop ownership. So I really like that you brought us there.
Well, and let me give you one thing to add, just the kind of a final bow on this is, if you don't love them, someone else will.
Mhm.
And so that's, to me, it's kind of important that you realize that. And what's the cost of replacing an employee, no matter what position they're in? Not
Yeah.
the cost of getting them in the seat. What's the cost to the business for losing that perfect
uh,
person that's producing?
yeah. So right. So right. I mean, it's the same thing when we talk about marketing to acquire a customer and retain a customer.
Hmm.
Retaining your team members is, I mean, the amount of time, energy, effort, prayers, lunches, all
Right.
trainings, all the things that we put into our team members for sure. So
Yeah.
that was likely my favorite part of this chat by the time we get to the end.
Hmm.
What about, let's transition to this is a hard one because I'm finding everybody has a different benchmark. But
Hmm.
do you think there are any average industry benchmarks, or if not, what's the VIC benchmark for an average repair order or average car count? I know it varies, by type of shop, but
Right.
generally speaking, what do you have to say about what shops should be looking or aiming for when it comes to average repair order or car count?
Well, so I'm not gonna steer away from the dollar value because we got labor rates all over the country
Mhm.
that are above, 215, 260. I actually talked to a parts distributor we work with in Lancaster, PA. He has a guy that's got a $68 labor rate.
68?
68. Yeah.
Wow.
He called me because he said this guy needs some coaching. So and because he was that guy who went out and said I can go do this on my own, and he never took into account the cost of doing business. So
Mhm.
what I'm going to kind of lay out is something different rather than going after the dollar value because each one's going to be a little different. I use how many cars we should get through the shop and how many hours. So each technician should be able to generate 3 hours per car with a good inspection program. Good prevent for the states for the people that are in states that have state inspections. Say, but a good preventive maintenance inspection program, you should easily be able to sell 3 hours per car. And with that, the technician should be able to generate 195 hours in a given month, which then equates to 65 cars per month. So you'd have to run, yeah, you have to run the math on that, but it's typically one, the parts are 1 to 1. So if I can run the math here really quick if you like. So if a shop sees a car that got a $200 labor rate and they have 1 to 1 parts labor ratio, they have a $400 per sold hour. So if in that case it was going to be the average repair order is going to be about $1,200.
Okay.
So and then you multiply that times 65. So the 1,200 times 65 is 78,000 for that one technician per month.
Okay.
And that, the standard, the 3 billable hours per repair order, 3 cars per day was actually done, by, we're talking really, solid coaching numbers. Marie Voth, RPM training.
Yep.
There's those of us who come out of the Bob O'Connor tree. That is the model, and that model is one we've looked at. And it's like, can it change? Should it change? And we, as coaches, we go and we'll get together and we'll talk about these numbers and say, should these benchmarks move? The only benchmark that should move is going to be the average dollar sold per repair order based on labor rate.
Mhm. So that's kind of the general rule of thumb. Do
Hmm.
you have any variations for like specialty shops or
Yes,
Euro or whatever?
Euros and specialty is seeing 4 to 4.5 hours per
Mhm.
repair order. I've got one shop he's a general repair but they have such a strong inspection program and they have such strong advisors. They're doing 4.5 hours per car.
Yeah.
So they're seeing 2.5 cars a day. And I've got shops that have technicians billing 11 hours a day. They're 2 hours above benchmark. They've got really good systems in place and they're able to generate it. I've got others that are, say just on board, or they're hitting the industry average, which is 5.2 hours per tech per day, that's where you see the effective labor rate go down because
Mhm.
you have, essentially 3.8 hours evaporate is gone at the end of the day.
Yeah. Do you still have shops that, for whatever reason, either they're not doing it or they refuse to do DVIs?
Yes. It's,
How are how do you handle that? How are you? Because I know that you believe in that. You've
Mhm.
referenced it multiple times. I know
Right.
we believe in it. And in fact, I'm sure you've heard about this. I don't know how recent it was, but I feel like it was pretty recent. There was a court case where I hope I'm getting these details right. I think Lucas Underwood was talking about it,
Mhm.
where um, this person brought their vehicle in for an oil change
Mhm.
and they left and ended up in a car accident. Long story short, in court, the judge ended up um, holding the shop accountable, saying, "You're the professional. You should have found it." So the person had a brake issue. They
Right.
were in there for an oil change, but
Mhm.
a brake issue because the shop did not do an inspection. They were like, "Well, when they came in for an oil change, we didn't even look at the brakes."
Right.
The judge said, "Well, you're the professional. How are they supposed to know they have a brake issue if you don't tell them when the car is in your shop?"
Right.
Which lends itself to, okay, we do DVIs for safety reasons. It's up to you as a grown adult to decide whether you want to do the work or not. So,
Right.
how are you convincing and getting these shops to adjust their process to now do these DVIs?
Great question. We come down into what's behind it. So I have a new client. He's only been with us 2 months, and the region of the country he comes from is the Amish area. It's the salt of the earth people, and we had actually had this conversation yesterday. I got a commitment out of him at the end of the day. Right of the meeting was to implement an inspection program. And essentially, what comes down to is you have to get past why are they not doing it by hitting it from this point. The question I asked him was this: what is the I'll call the sole purpose of an automotive shop, not their shop. And people they'll go to the position of, well, it's for to make money. No, that's not the point. Why are we here? It's a good example could be, why is Starbucks up the street? To sell coffee.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so if we can get down to what is the reason the customer brings their vehicle to us, to ensure that they are safe going down the road, that comes back to the purpose of the business. The purpose of the business is to ensure that your clients who trust you with their vehicle, trust you with their family, trust you with their life, can rely on you. It is it is the responsibility of us as experts to evaluate the vehicle as best we can. We don't have crystal balls, but by putting an inspection program in place, getting the customer to approve it, inspecting the vehicle for the I'll call the obvious things, and notating it, and then giving the customer the choice to make that decision, because it should always be their decision. Ignoring something because you don't want to be painted with a negative brush. There's plenty of stuff out there about how they call the rip-off artists in the automotive world. There's rip-offs everywhere.
Yeah.
They're the one happen to get to the news. Well, what do we do is we recoil because we hear customers say, "Well, I don't want you to be digging into my car." Well, that was 1 out of 200 would have said no harshly. We remember that. But if
Mhm.
you go back to what is your core purpose, it's to ensure your clients are safe. That's simple. And that's how I connected with Ray. I said, why do your customers bring it to you? I said, you and what we came down to, because we're both, we actually have really good spiritual conversations. I said, God has given you stewardship over this business, and he's giving you stewardship over your clients. I said, isn't it your responsibility to ensure that their vehicles are safe and give them the opportunity to service the vehicle or not? He's like, that's a
Mhm.
good point. So,
Mhm.
so I got a commitment out of him yesterday to meet with his advisor yesterday and his text today. They came back and it's like, he said, it went great. We're implementing the program today.
Yeah.
I'm like, great.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to Simon Sinek's book, Start with Why, right?
Yep,
When
exactly.
you connect those 2 dots, I think
Mhm,
it just opens eyes, so I love that. Are there any other areas like, I feel like the DVI thing is still a big topic,
mhm.
um, but are there any other specific areas where you can see shops making big improvement in processes?
I
Because
would
we're talking about DVI, that's you're changing habits. Are
right.
there any other things you can think of?
Tracking time.
Oh,
That can be a hot button. Go back to what we talked about with listening to phone, the phone recordings. We don't want people to feel like we're watching over them. Well, if you're not tracking time, you're not able to gauge how effective you're doing as a rainmaker, as the owner. The advisors are doing their role as generating the service, and how well the technicians are doing, or how good they're doing. You're not able to identify it. And I like to call timekeeping the scan tool for your shop,
mm,
is really what it comes down to. It's a diagnostic tool to see what dial in there needs to be improved, whether it be improving our marketing or improving our processes in the shop. And I what I see is shop owners who they undervalue timekeeping. You cannot track effective labor rate unless you are tracking time,
mhm.
and you can't track it accurately.
Yeah.
And so right now we have systems in place, that are, you look at like uh, Techmetric, Autoleap, they have great timekeeping systems built in place. It takes the objection of going out and punching time clocks. And I see when shops get a hold of that and start implementing it, they're like, wow, I didn't realize how much time was evaporating at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the biggest one, and probably the one that people steer away from the most.
Yeah. So all this stuff really comes down to speed of the leader, speed of the team, right? So like
Exactly.
what's the leader saying? What's the leader doing? What's his experience, her experience? What would you say in your coaching have been some of the best leadership best practices to help these shop owners, one, be a better leader,
Mhm.
but two, grow leaders from within?
Okay. So let's touch on the leadership best practices. Is first, be a good follower. You can't be a good leader if you don't know how to follow people, because
Hmm.
you're not gonna know what to exemplify. Um, be a good listener. Leaders listen. They listen to hear. They don't listen to react and respond. They listen to go. Is there validity behind what's being said? They listen to podcasts. They listen to teachings. They're they're good readers, whether they be audiobooks or reading a book, traditionally reading a book.
Mhm.
Uh, to bring someone up behind them. You've been to Dunn's River Falls in Jamaica.
Yep,
Did you climb the falls?
I did.
Do you remember what it was like? Do you remember what the Jamaican dude said?
Well, so we're kind of rebels
You
and
did it on your own, huh?
it on our own.
Well, let me tell you, Marley and I were there, and back long, long time ago. And here you guys like macho males, and we're in our 30s, and we all got brand new cameras on, and we get down there. We're at the base of the falls, and there's like 25 of us. And this black dude, Jamaican guy, goes, "Okay, man, all of you, give me your cameras." We're like, And it's like, no, no, you give me your cameras. It's like they'll be safe. So then he tells us, he said, "Okay, he goes, what I want you to do is take the hand of the person in front of you, take the hand of the person behind you." And he goes, he told the person, "I'm going to tell you what to say, what I want you to do, and you pass it on all the way down." And he goes, "It will make it to the top, and you won't get in the water unless you want to." And that lesson taught me something very simple. You have to have somebody taking you in this journey, and
Mhm,
you have to bring someone else along.
mhm,
And all of us made it successfully to the top of the falls. We had one fall, one fall we wanted to go into, and and experience it. Pool that we all hung out in. Our cameras didn't get wet, and we learned that lesson was you need to bring somebody with you,
mhm.
and you didn't get where you're at on your own.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Uh, and identifying potential is really sometimes hidden.
Yeah,
Uh, you know, you, I'll use me as an example. I like to say this in my coaching when I'm with a new client. I said, I graduated in the top 10% with the bottom 10% of my class. I barely made it out of high school. Um, and
You made
thankfully,
it.
but yeah, I made it exactly. But thankfully, along the way, I saw people that saw potential in me and helped to nurture and guide me. And I was that rebel in school. I was a back row kid. I was the typical high school gearhead.
Mhm.
Uh, but years later, people saw potential in me, and then I began to see it myself. And part of seeing potential in those people around you, whether it be a younger person you brought in or somebody the potential may just have surfaced. Finding the right person to get in the right seat and then growing that person is,
Yeah.
man, it's so rewarding.
Yeah, when you invest that time, that energy, that compassion in people, you're not only building leaders, but you're building loyalty as well. So
Yeah,
you're going to build them up and then they're going to stay there. So that's super awesome.
yeah.
Hey, one thing that has really grabbed Brian and I both, like
Mhm,
aggressively grabbed us, is we were at a conference a couple of years ago and we left really like sad and just, I don't know, confused because the vibe at this particular event, which we shared this feedback,
mhm,
and this organization already knew and they've already made changes in a variety of ways, but at that time the vibe was just so pessimistic, and we had like this sort of like a you've seen like these dating sort of sponsor dating things where
mhm.
sponsors are sitting at different tables and shop owners are rotating around. So you get to spend time at this table individually for like, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes with each group of shop owners as they move throughout the different tables. Nobody came to our table. We felt like the kid who gets picked last, to play basketball or whatever. But we were like, I mean, we have a great reputation. We
Mhm.
are super involved and engaged in the industry. So we were like, why is no one, I mean, Vic, no one
That's unusual for me.
to our table? Like, we're just like, are we invisible? What is going on here? And we finally started
Uh,
chatting with people, like, at different times, and over and over and over again, we heard, "We're not interested in marketing. I'm about to close my doors and walk away." And we were like, "What do you mean, close your doors?" And
yeah.
they're like, and these were not, "I just opened 5 years ago and it's just not going well." No, these are like, "I'm the 3rd generation in this business. We've had this shop for 42 years. Like,
Mhm.
we've had 4 different locations and we've been in business for this many years." Like, it's legacy, successful shops
Right.
who are like, "I'm tired. I'm just shutting the door. We don't need marketing." And we're like, "Whoa, what? Why aren't you selling it to one of your team members? Why aren't you selling it to anyone? Shops are being bought like crazy right now.
They are.
You passing it down to a family member, or like, there are choices. You've invested so much time, so much energy, so much effort, money
Right.
into this business. Why would you just close the door and walk away?" So I want you to share with our listeners about exit planning.
All right. This is another one that's near and dear to my heart because
Yeah.
I sold my shop now. It's going on 11 years ago and exited in 2016. And it was interesting because I had actually been in a succession planning class a couple years earlier, and the question actually got asked of me, "When do you want to retire?" And of course, retirement's overrated, as you can tell. I'm doing this now,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I said, and my answer was 57 and a half. And one of the guy teaching the class, he said, "Okay, all you guys need to do is think about what's the next chapter."
Mhm.
And when I get a new client on, ask the question, what's your next phase of your life?" And even if I've met a young guy that's getting ready to start the business, and he was 40 years old, and I asked Mario, I could, Mario, I said, you're just getting started. I said, when do you want to retire? He goes, dude, I haven't even started the shop and you're asking me when I want to retire? I
Yeah.
go, exactly. I go, you ever been on a road trip that's had no destination? He goes, yeah. I go, what's it go? What like? He goes, oh, it was terrible. I go, okay, that's exactly what you're getting ready to do. Go on a road trip. You can move the destination marker, whether you can bring it up early, you can make it later if you want. But if you have a target, it's easier to hit. People that I get now, it's like, I want to sell my business in 2 years. I need to help you with succession planning. I'm like, I got to be honest with them. It's like, it's close to being too late
Mhm.
unless you identify somebody to sell it externally.
Mhm.
But somebody who's in business now, the business is thriving, you need a 5 to 10 year window. Part of this starts it with is what's your next chapter and the when, because you have a significant amount of talent, gifting. You remember that the Duns River Falls, we were
Mhm.
bringing people along. You're actually bringing more. You can bring more people along quicker.
Yeah.
Whether you go out and volunteer, whether you go and work with a trainer company, who knows what the next chapter will be.
Right.
If we don't know what the next chapter will be, what happens is we just let things happen, and then you get to that point where I'm tired.
Mhm.
And so with me, where I was saying the near and dear to my heart was I ignored that conversation, and well, then the opportunity presented itself to sell my shop. And I'm like, okay, cool. I sold it for a decent amount of money. I was going to retire. But it was interesting, Kim, was the day after I made my last trip to the shop, the next morning I woke up and honestly, I was lost
Yeah.
because I didn't have a place to go. I had a 12-mile drive to work every day. I parked in the same spot. I went into my office. I had a sense of purpose, and I woke up the next morning without a sense of purpose. I had no idea what I was going to do. The next 2 months were extremely boring,
Mhm.
and then I began to craft. Okay, what's my next stage look like? I know I want to enjoy myself. I know it's going to be a hard work. I want to make a good living, and most importantly, though, I want to have fun.
Mhm.
And right now, I'm having more fun than I ever had working with clients. It
Yes. Mhm.
for me, it's much richer to work with clients and help them see here's a pothole I stepped in. This is what I learned at year 5, year 15, whatever that point is in my life, I learned it. It's like, hey, I want to help you get around it. And you
Mhm.
have those that ignore you, and they're like, they do drive into it.
Yeah.
But I guess the point I want to make is knowing what your purpose is next, um, or in the when. But having good numbers was extremely important.
Mhm.
Having good numbers, the shop's got to be profitable. It has to have a good culture. It has to have good processes if you want to maximize the sale. I had one say to me, like, well, I just bought this piece of alignment equipment. It cost me $30,000. I'm like, great. You're going to get 3 grand for it when you close up your shop. They're like, really? I
Mhm.
go, yeah. 10 cents on the dollar for equipment. And that's, we've been looking at that as shops close, as shops sell.
Yeah.
That's the number it gets puts on the transition. Uh, and so what I want shop owners to hear is this: is you've invested your time, you invested your effort, and you invested your hard, your sweat and literally blood for shop owners who've worked on cars to
Mhm.
build the shop.
Yeah.
Doesn't it deserve your attention to know what that next stage is, and then to identify and build a leader in the shop, and making it profitable? Have you lost the vision? What's it gonna, what will it take for you to get re-energized?
Yeah, that's like a whole nother gosh, we could do a podcast or something. Brian's been doing a lot with vision building and vision casting.
Hmm.
Ironically, there's not a lot of like books or anything out there specifically on vision casting.
Right.
So he's really been digging into that. But I think for one thing, I find just having these kind of side conversations at all the industry events, and I've asked some shop owner friends, I'm like, what is, like, just like you just said, what is your next season, what
Hmm.
does it look like? And they're like, I don't know, I haven't even thought about that. And then
Yeah.
as we start to talk further about it, some don't know how to
Yeah.
dream or
Right.
get out of the present and look
Hmm.
ahead. So that's like a whole nother. Wow, that's well, all right, we can dig into that for a long time. But one thing you said that kind of triggered for me is you said you must have good numbers, you must
Hmm.
have good culture, and you must have good processes so that you can maximize the sale, so
Right.
that your business is valuable and viable. We've talked about the numbers and we've talked about processes.
Hmm.
Let's dig a little bit, just we have a few minutes left to dig a little bit into good culture. When you are working with a shop who maybe they're doing pretty good with numbers and
Hmm.
process, but the culture
Right.
just feels icky.
Right.
How are you talk a little bit about what how do you help a shop build and maintain a great culture?
Well, we start out with what are their core values?
Mm,
That comes, and whatever their core values are is to get them defined. For us in our shop, because my, I lost my dad when I was very young, and I watched my mom struggle to get services on her vehicle. Well, that became kind of a hot button for me, where what part of our core values at our shop was we were female friendly before Ask Petty was ever around,
uh-huh.
and we were known for taking care of elderly, widows, people who, their husbands were traveling. So that was one of our core values. So what we did was I exemplified that. This is how we do this. In our case, auto repair should be no more difficult than going to the grocery store and buying a gallon of milk or a dozen eggs. It doesn't need to be complicated. It is complicated, but it needs to be brought down to a very simple, transactional, but most importantly, have a relational element. So it was easy when I had someone ask me these questions, what are your core values? I'm like, I don't know. That
Mm,
was, probably 5 to 10 years into the business. And that we started digging into what are the things that were important to me. So this goes to the shop owner. What are the things that are important to you?
mhm.
And then you need to live those and exemplify them for your team.
Yep.
Teamwork and accountability and quality are much more than a poster in the shop.
Mhm.
You can't say I'm female friendly and then you exemplify you're not female friendly to a client. It's just
That's
it shows lack of integrity,
Yep.
and it shows duplicity. And then what does that do with your team? It builds lack of trust. So you need to model that culture that you want repeated in your shop.
Yeah.
And and then I guess the next space, kind of fine point here is live it and be an example. Recruit those who fit that exact culture that you're looking to have, and release those who don't, and release them quickly, because they will pollute that, that well that you're trying to fill. I was at a client shop the other day, and there was this new technician. He's generating 11 hours a day, and I was talking to him. I said, I've really watched your numbers. And he's like, thank you. And I said, you're doing a great job. And he said, I've been to a shop where we've got a lot of work. And he goes, and the people to work with were miserable. I've
Mhm.
been to shops where there's not been a lot of work, and the people we work with were great. He
Mhm.
goes, but coming here, he goes, I've got both. And he
Yeah.
goes, and he goes, I'm happy and I'm not going anywhere.
Mhm.
And so, as a client who, or not client, as a shop owner listening, is just define your core values, and know what they are. If you want, it's like you want to be a happy go lucky shop, that's cool. You wanna be a highly serious, that's cool too. Find people that fit that. That's why they have tons of different Mexican restaurants. Why you have probably sure tons of Cajun restaurants, and they all have different flavors. You go to
Mhm.
your favorite one.
Yeah. Repeatedly, right?
Yeah.
Loyal to them. You basically have said all the stuff that we always say when it comes to culture as well. And my favorite class to teach right now, I've taught it multiple times. I'm not tired of it yet. Um, is all about culture. And you know, for us, we were just like you. We've been in business for many years. We were not subscribing to that whole vision, core values,
Mhm.
mission, all this stuff. And then finally, when we got into coaching, we did get that stuff together and it lived in a filing cabinet,
Right.
right? And if you ask anybody, what are your core values? Nobody knew. What's your mission? Nobody knew. So they were
Yeah.
really pointless. It really wasn't until we started putting our foot in the shallow end of the pool with EOS
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
that started changing. And Brian was just talking on a podcast recently saying that he was the number one guy, like, oh, core values, that's like BS stuff. And, doesn't really matter. But once he got on board and we truly got those fully implemented, we now, like you referenced this, we hire,
Mhm.
fire, reward, and recognize
Yep.
based off of our core values.
There you
And
go.
we believe in, and I feel like I've seen where this is controversial, but I believe in this, which is hire slow, fire
Mhm.
fast.
Exactly.
And I was interviewing yesterday, and one of the people in this interview asked my favorite question that anyone's ever asked me. And they said, your core values are so important to you because to apply with us, the very first thing you have to do is go to our core values page of our website, read them, watch the video that Brian did
Mhm.
explaining them, and then in your message back to us, tell us what resonated most about what Brian said in the video. So we know
Right.
that you watched it. And so she said, I love what I'm seeing about your core values, but where'd they come from and how did you develop them? And I was like, whoa, that's really a great
Yeah.
question. It
Yeah.
just showed a lot of initiative and interest. But I want to say for anyone that is in that position where you have core values, but nobody knows them, and maybe you have to go pull it up in the Google Drive to see what they are, or you don't have them. If you want to explore what that's like, reach out to Vic. I know he can help you. I'm happy
Mhm.
to share how we did it ourselves. But for real, get them in place. And like he
Yeah.
said, put them on display, talk about them every day, live them. I have 40 team members. If you asked any single one of my team members, what are your core values and how do you see them played out in your business? They could all tell you just like that. Like they know their name, they can tell you the core values. So it's that important
Yeah, it is.
to doing everything here. So, Vic, last word. Is there anything that you have not shared that you want to share, your number one top piece of advice, a burning comment that you just want to get out there, anything that you want to share?
Let me sum it. I pretty much it'll probably sum up everything is this. Be teachable, learn daily, build others, and bring someone with you on the journey.
Oh, that is great. That is great. Vic, as always, it was really great hanging out with you. Thanks so much for your time today. Tell everybody where they can find you, how they can
Okay.
get in touch, how they can learn from you, how they can get connected.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you for having me on. I've enjoyed the conversation as always with you. If you want to explore, have an exploratory call with me, Vic at shopownercoach.com. You go to our website, shopownercoach.com. It's no obligation, no salesman will call. It's just a conversation. One of the things I find is establishing connections with others. You never know where they're going to go. If there's any way that we can help you, you got a question, shoot me email or even text me 713-826-2978.
There you go.